Marcus Johnson stood in his driveway, keys in hand, staring at his very first car, a used 2015 Honda Civic. The morning sun reflected off its silver paint, hiding the few scratches and small dents that made the car affordable enough for a high school student's savings. He had worked every weekend and summer break for 2 years at Joe's auto shop to save up for this moment. The car wasn't anything fancy. The paint was a bit faded, and the interior had some wear, but to Marcus, it was perfect. He ran his hand along the hood, remembering all those hours spent changing oil, rotating tires, and learning about engines from Joe. The old mechanic had taught him more than just car maintenance. He'd shown Marcus how to spot a good deal and negotiate fairly. At 17, Marcus was already known in his neighborhood as the kid who could fix anything with an engine. His bedroom walls were covered with pictures of cars and rockets, mixed with certificates from science fairs and robotics competitions. The top shelf held his proudest achievement, a first-place trophy from the state engineering competition, where his design for a more efficient solar panel had beaten seniors from private schools. "You checking for scratches again?" His mother called from the porch, a cup of coffee in her hand and pride in her voice. She worked double shifts as a nurse to keep their small family afloat after Marcus's father passed away 5 years ago. "Just making sure everything's perfect, Mom," Marcus replied, grinning. "I've got to pick up my project partner for the robotics competition. We're meeting the team at school to practice." His mother nodded, but her expression turned serious. "Remember what we talked about?" "Yes, Mom." "Registration and insurance in the glove box. Both hands on the wheel. No speeding. And if I get pulled over..." He paused, reciting the words she drilled into him since he got his learner's permit: "Be polite, move slowly, keep my hands visible." These weren't just normal parent worries. They both knew why she insisted on these rules. Their town of Millbrook wasn't known for racial incidents, but they weren't unheard of either. Marcus had seen how some of his white friends got warnings for speeding while his black friends got tickets for broken taillights. Marcus checked his reflection in the car window, straightening his NASA t-shirt. His dark skin contrasted with the bright smile that made him popular among his classmates. He'd inherited his father's height and his mother's quick mind, standing tall at 6 feet with grades that put him at the top of his class. The inside of the car still had that distinct used car smell, mixed with the pine air freshener he'd hung from the mirror. The steering wheel cover he bought with his first paycheck from Joe's gave the car a more personal touch. In the back seat, his robotics kit and textbooks showed the balance between his practical skills and academic ambitions. Marcus inserted the key into the ignition, and the engine came to life with a smooth purr. He'd checked every inch of this car before buying it, and Joe had helped him replace the timing belt just to be safe. This wasn't just transportation, it was his ticket to independence and his first real step toward his dream of becoming an aerospace engineer. As he backed out of the driveway, Marcus waved to his mom, who still stood watching from the porch. The morning sun caught his school ring, the one his mother had insisted on buying him despite its cost. The ring's stone was deep blue, like the sky he hoped to engineer spacecraft to explore one day. Little did Marcus know that this ordinary morning would turn into anything but ordinary. As he drove through the familiar streets of Millbrook, the universe was about to show him that justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. For now, though, he was simply a teenager heading to school, proud of his accomplishment, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Marcus drove through Oak Hills, the wealthy part of town he usually avoided. His regular route to school was closed for construction, forcing him to take this detour. The streets here were wider, lined with massive houses and perfectly trimmed lawns. His Honda looked out of place among the BMWs and Mercedes parked in circular driveways. The flash of red and blue lights in his mirror made his heart skip. Marcus checked his speed exactly at the limit. He'd been extra careful in this neighborhood. Following his mother's instructions, he turned on his interior lights, kept his hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, and pulled over slowly. Officer Brad Thompson watched the silver Honda through narrowed eyes. He'd been patrolling Oak Hills for 8 years, and he knew what belonged and what didn't. The car moved too slowly, like someone trying not to draw attention. His computer showed the vehicle was registered just 2 days ago, classic sign of a recently stolen car. Marcus stayed completely still as the officer approached, remembering every word of his mother's warnings. The window was already rolled down, and his license and registration sat ready on the dashboard. "License and registration," Officer Thompson barked, his hand resting on his holster. His flashlight beam swept through the car's interior, lingering on the robotics equipment in the back seat. "They're right here, sir," Marcus replied politely, keeping his hands visible. "I just bought this car. Everything's legal." Thompson snatched the papers, studying them with obvious suspicion. "Step out of the vehicle." "Sir? I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong." Marcus's voice remained steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "Out of the vehicle. Now." Thompson's free hand moved from his holster to his radio. "Dispatch, requesting backup for a possible 503. Marcus stepped out slowly, his mind racing. A 503 was grand theft auto. He knew this from his criminal justice class. "Officer, please check the registration. This is my car. I worked 2 years to buy it." Thompson ignored him, roughly spinning Marcus around and pushing him against the car. Cold handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "We've had reports of car theft in the area. Your story about buying this car doesn't add up." "My wallet has the receipt," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "And Joe from Joe's auto shop can verify everything. He helped me buy it." "Sure he did," Thompson sneered, pushing Marcus toward the patrol car. "They all have a friend who can verify everything." Through the patrol car's window, Marcus watched Officer Thompson searching his Honda, pulling out his school books and dumping his robotics kit onto the seat. The officer was holding his phone now, probably running the VIN number. In the distance, another patrol car's siren wailed. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering his father's words from long ago. "Sometimes, son, you do everything right, and the world still gets it wrong. That's when you need to be strongest." Above the scene, unnoticed by everyone below, a small distortion appeared in the morning sky. Something was watching, and it wasn't happy with what it saw. High above the suburban street, hidden by advanced cloaking technology, Justice Evaluator Dan Sevens sat in his observation pod. The pod's interior glowed with soft blue light from dozens of holographic screens, each showing different angles of the scene below. Dan Sevens' form shifted between solid and translucent as he moved, his crystalline body designed to process information faster than any Earth computer. The Federation had sent him to study Earth's justice systems. For 3 months, he'd watched courts, police stations, and street interactions. His mission was simple: determine if humans were ready to join the galactic community. Today's observation route had brought him to this quiet neighborhood, where his sensors had detected a spike in emotional distress. Dan Sevens' screens replayed the last 5 minutes from multiple angles. His artificial mind processed every detail: the careful way Marcus had driven, the officer's aggressive stance, the unnecessary backup call. The pod's emotion sensors showed Marcus's fear mixed with dignity, while Officer Thompson's readings displayed a toxic blend of prejudice and assumed authority. "Computer, access Earth's legal database," Dan Seven commanded. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Compare Officer Thompson's actions against local, state, and federal laws." The computer responded instantly, projecting a detailed analysis. Multiple violations of procedure flashed red on the screen. But what caught Dan Seven's attention was the pattern. He accessed Officer Thompson's complete service record, encrypted behind layers of police department security. The data told a clear story, a history of similar stops, all targeting young people of color, all in this wealthy neighborhood. Computer, access Marcus Johnson's personal history, Dan 7 ordered next. The screens filled with school records, work history, and community service. He saw the hours at Joe's auto shop, the engineering competitions, the robotics awards. Every piece of data painted a picture of a young human striving for excellence despite systemic obstacles. The pod systems had also captured Officer Thompson's radio call. Possible 503, the code for Grand Theft Auto. Dan 7's crystalline form flickered with what humans might call anger. In his 3 months of observation, he'd seen enough to understand the pattern this represented. Computer, activate full spectrum analysis. The pod's sensors penetrated deeper, reading brain patterns, stress levels, and truth indicators. Marcus's readings showed honest fear and confusion. Thompson showed something darker, a satisfaction in exercising power, a prejudice so deep it had become comfortable. Dan 7 reached a decision. The Federation's primary directive was non-interference, but there were exceptions. When a society showed promise of evolution but faced obstacles from within, carefully calculated intervention was permitted. Earth had such potential. Dan 7 had seen it in its art, its music, its dreams of reaching the stars. But it was held back by the very systems meant to protect it. He pressed a crystalline finger to the pod's central control panel. Computer, prepare for Protocol 7 Alpha, directed intervention. The pod's systems hummed to life, its cloak beginning to shimmer with energy. Justice must not only be done, Dan 7 said, quoting an Earth phrase he'd come to admire, it must be seen to be done. Below, Marcus sat in the patrol car, unaware that an alien force of justice was about to change everything. Officer Thompson stood smugly by his car, equally unaware that his world was about to be turned upside down. The backup patrol car was just turning onto the street as Dan 7's pod began its descent. The time for watching was over. The time for action had come. The backup patrol car had just arrived when the air above them began to ripple like heat waves over hot pavement. Officer Thompson was checking Marcus's trunk for what he called evidence when his radio crackled and died. Then his flashlight went dark. Then his car's engine stopped. A perfect circle of silence spread across the street. Car alarms fell quiet. House lights flickered and went out. Even the birds stopped singing. In the patrol car, Marcus watched through the window as a large shape appeared in the sky, like someone pulling back an invisible curtain. The alien pod hung 30 feet above the ground, smooth and silver, shaped like a teardrop. It was bigger than a car but smaller than a house, its surface rippling with colors that shouldn't exist. Both police officers drew their weapons, but their guns suddenly felt ice cold in their hands. "This is Officer Thompson. Get on the ground!" Thompson shouted at the pod, his voice shaking. The backup officer, Jones, was already retreating to his car, but his radio was dead too. The pod's surface split open like a flower blooming. Light poured out, not harsh or bright, but somehow deep, as if someone had turned space itself into a spotlight. A figure floated down from the opening, its body made of what looked like living crystal. Where its feet touched the ground, small circles of frost spread across the asphalt. Dan 7 stood 12 feet tall, his crystalline form shifting colors with each movement. His voice, when it came, didn't seem to travel through the air but appeared directly in their minds. "Officer Bradley Thompson," the voice said, "you have violated multiple sections of your own law enforcement code." Thompson tried to speak, but no words came out. His gun had become too cold to hold, forcing him to drop it. The backup officer was frozen in place, his face pale with shock. "Marcus Johnson," Dan 7 continued, turning to face the patrol car. The door clicked open by itself. "Please step out. Your restraints are no longer active." Marcus felt the handcuffs fall away like ice melting. He stepped out of the car, his legs shaking but his head held high. The alien's presence felt like standing next to a thunderstorm that had learned how to think. Dan 7 raised one crystalline hand. A hologram appeared in the air, showing Marcus buying his car, working at Joe's shop, winning science competitions. This young human has violated no laws. He has shown dedication to learning, hard work, and the advancement of his species. Another hologram appeared, this one showing Officer Thompson's past traffic stops, each one targeting young people of color. The images played faster and faster, building a clear pattern of bias and abuse of power. Thompson tried to look away, but the images followed his gaze. The Galactic Federation has been watching Earth, Dan 7 announced. Your species shows great promise, but individuals like you, Officer Thompson, hold back its evolution. Today, that changes. Today, justice takes a new form. Marcus stood straighter, no longer afraid. Something in the alien's presence made him feel protected, validated. For the first time since being pulled over, he smiled. Above them, the pod hummed with power, preparing for what would come next. The crystalline being's form pulsed with deep blue light as it addressed the growing crowd of onlookers. Several residents of Oak Hills had emerged from their homes, phones raised to record the impossible scene unfolding on their street. Every device showed only static. Earth stands at a crossroads, Dan 7's voice resonated in everyone's minds. Your species reaches for the stars while still chaining itself to ancient prejudices. Today, you witnessed the first step toward change. The alien raised both arms, creating a massive holographic display visible to everyone present. The image showed Earth from space, then zoomed in rapidly through the atmosphere, focusing on thousands of similar incidents happening across the globe. Each scene showed the same pattern: abuse of power, racial profiling, systemic injustice. Officer Thompson, Dan 7 turned to face the trembling policeman. You have been selected as a focal point for transformation. Your actions today were not isolated. They are part of a pattern that spans your entire career. Another hologram appeared, showing Thompson's police record in three-dimensional detail. Every traffic stop, every arrest, every interaction was categorized and analyzed. The data formed a damning pattern of bias that even Thompson couldn't deny. But mere punishment solves nothing, Dan 7 continued. The Federation believes in transformation through understanding. Your sentence will be educational. Marcus watched in awe as the alien's crystalline body projected streams of light that surrounded Officer Thompson. The policeman tried to run but found himself frozen in place, his feet seemingly merged with the asphalt. For the next year, you will experience life through the eyes of those you have judged, Dan 7 announced. Your genetic structure will be temporarily modified. Every day, your appearance will shift through different ethnicities. You will know firsthand the prejudice you have inflicted on others. Thompson's skin began to shimmer, cycling through different shades and features. The change wasn't painful, but the officer's face showed pure shock as he watched his hands change color. The Galactic Federation has chosen Earth for possible membership, Dan 7 addressed the crowd. But membership requires evolution. Humanity must confront its biases, its systemic flaws. Officer Thompson's transformation will be broadcast worldwide as a reminder that justice takes many forms. The backup officer, Jones, had dropped to his knees, his gun forgotten on the ground. Several neighbors had moved closer to Marcus, as if drawn to his quiet dignity in the face of this extraordinary event. Marcus Johnson, Dan 7 turned finally to the young man. Your unjust detention ends now. But your role in this story is not over. The Federation recognizes potential when it sees it. The alien's form glowed brighter as it prepared to reveal the next phase of its intervention. The entire street held its breath, knowing they were witnessing a moment that would change human history forever. Officer Thompson watched in horror as his skin continued to change. One moment it was dark as night, the next light as morning. His features shifted smoothly between different racial characteristics, each transformation lasting exactly 5 minutes before moving to the next. Dan 7's crystalline form pulsed with each change, directing the transformation. The changes will occur randomly throughout each day, the alien explained. You will experience life as every race you have discriminated against. Your database records show particular bias against Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Middle Eastern individuals. You will know their lives intimately. The crowd watched, mesmerized, as Thompson's appearance cycled through different ethnicities. Some neighbors filmed with their phones, which had mysteriously started working again, ensuring the moment would be shared worldwide. The transformation is more than skin deep, Dan 7 continued. When you appear as someone of Asian descent, facial recognition systems will identify you as Asian. When you appear Black, your ID photo will match. Your documentation will update in real time to match each change. You will experience every aspect of the lives you have impacted. Thompson touched his face, his hands trembling. How long? He managed to ask. 1 Earth year, Dan 7 replied. Each transformation will last between 5 minutes and 5 hours, occurring randomly. You cannot predict or control the changes. Just as those you profiled could not control how you would treat them based on their appearance. The alien's form shifted, creating a holographic display showing Thompson's future transformations. Your police credentials remain active. You will continue your duties, experiencing law enforcement from every possible perspective. Your body camera will record everything, creating a database of human behavior toward different ethnicities. Marcus stepped forward, drawn by the incredible scene. Will he feel what others feel? He asked the alien. He will maintain his own consciousness, Dan 7 explained, but will experience everything that comes with each appearance. The stares. The whispers. The random security checks. The followed-in-store experiences. Everything. Thompson's uniform felt tight and loose in strange places as his body structure subtly changed with each transformation. His badge remained the same, a constant reminder of his position of power he had abused. Your experience will be monitored by Federation sensors, Dan 7 announced. Any attempt to hide or avoid public interaction will result in an extension of the transformation period. You must live fully as each version of yourself. The backup officer, Jones, watched his partner's transformation with wide eyes. Similar ripples of shock and understanding moved through the crowd. This was justice served in a way no human court could manage, justice that forced understanding through direct experience. The Federation believes in rehabilitation over punishment. Dan 7's voice softened slightly. This is not meant to destroy you, Officer Thompson, but to rebuild you into something better. Your experiences over the next year will help reshape not just your perspective, but the perspectives of millions who will watch your journey. News. Vans began arriving at Oak Hills as Dan 7's intervention reached its final phase. The alien's crystalline form now hovered slightly above the ground, casting prismatic light patterns across the growing crowd of onlookers. The Federation's judgment is not complete, Dan 7 announced. Holographic screens materialized around Marcus, displaying his academic achievements, work history, and future potential. Marcus Johnson represents humanity's best qualities: determination, intelligence, and dignity in the face of injustice. With a gesture, Dan 7 cleared Marcus's record of the false arrest. Then, something more dramatic happened. Every police database in the country received simultaneously updated protocols for traffic stops, each one backed by Federation oversight technology. From this moment, Dan 7 declared, every law enforcement interaction in this nation will be monitored by Federation sensors. Racial profiling will trigger immediate administrative review. The changes begin here, but they will not end here. Officer Thompson, still cycling through various ethnicities, watched as his body camera transformed. The new device wasn't just recording video, it was analyzing his behavior patterns, tone of voice, and decision-making processes in real time. Your story will be shared, Dan 7 told Marcus. Not just the injustice you faced, but your response to it. Your dignity today has helped trigger a change that will ripple across your planet. News helicopters circled overhead as social media exploded with videos of the event. Despite attempts by some to dismiss the footage as fake, the Federation's technology ensured every recording was verifiably authentic. The police chief arrived, his car barely stopping before he jumped out. But before he could speak, Dan 7 projected a hologram showing years of departmental data, every traffic stop, every arrest, every complaint. The pattern of bias was undeniable. Your department will be the first to implement Federation oversight, Dan 7 informed the chief. Officer Thompson's transformation is just the beginning. Every officer will undergo mandatory empathy training using Federation technology. Those who cannot adapt will find themselves unable to continue in law enforcement. Marcus's phone buzzed with messages from his mother, who had seen the news. As he read her worried texts, Dan 7 created a protective field around him. You are now under Federation protection, the alien explained. Your safety is guaranteed as these changes take effect. The morning sun had fully risen now, illuminating a scene that would be remembered in human history. News anchors struggled to describe what they were seeing as Officer Thompson continued his transformations, each change broadcasted live across the globe. 6 months had passed since the incident in Oak Hills. Marcus sat in his new laboratory at the Federation's Earth Research Center, working on his xenoengineering project. The scholarship Dan 7 had arranged covered not just his education, but gave him access to technology decades ahead of current Earth science. The wall-mounted screen showed news coverage of Officer Thompson's latest community meeting. His skin currently showed East Asian features, though it would shift again within the hour. The transformation had changed him profoundly. After experiencing life from countless perspectives, he'd become one of the most effective advocates for police reform. Today marks the halfway point of Officer Thompson's Federation-mandated transformation, the news anchor reported. His documented experiences have led to police reform bills in 47 states. Federation oversight has reduced racial profiling incidents by 89% nationwide. Marcus turned back to his work, adjusting the holographic display showing his latest project, an atmospheric purification system combining Earth and Federation technology. His mother, recently appointed to the Federation's Human Rights Advisory Council, had helped implement similar oversight systems in hospitals, reducing racial disparities in medical care. The door chimed, and Thompson entered the lab. His appearance was shifting again, features flowing like water from Middle Eastern to African. Marcus, he said quietly, I came to thank you again. For what? Marcus asked, though he knew the answer. For not becoming bitter. For showing more dignity than I deserved that day. Thompson's voice had lost its old arrogance. The Federation chose well when they made you Earth's first xenoengineering student. A holographic screen activated, showing Dan 7's face. The alien observer had become Earth's primary Federation contact. The changes you both represent, Dan 7 said, prove humanity's capacity for growth. Officer Thompson's viral videos showing his daily experiences have opened millions of eyes. And Marcus's work combining Earth and Federation technology brings us closer to full galactic membership. Outside the lab's window, construction crews worked on Millbrook's new Federation embassy. The building would serve as Earth's first official connection to galactic civilization. Marcus's old Honda Civic sat in the parking lot, now a historical artifact that school children visited on field trips. The Federation's final report is nearly complete, Dan 7 announced. Earth's response to the intervention has been promising. Officer Thompson, your transformation will end as scheduled, but your experiences have been recorded for future training. Marcus, your atmospheric purification system will be the first Earth technology adapted for use on other worlds. As Thompson left the lab, his appearance shifting once again, Marcus smiled at the irony. One act of injustice, witnessed by the right observer, had opened Earth's path to the stars. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. Marcus turned back to his work, Earth's future literally in his hands, proof that justice could come from the stars, but change had to grow from human hearts.